Hey guys, welcome to the Comic Code. This is Nick at Ortiz. This is Don and Kevin. We're at the Interfan Jam this weekend, and we'll show you a little bit of what we got to see.
I'm tired. Really tired.
My name is Doc Boucher. I run the Interfan, and thank you for coming to the Jam. Today we're giving a special presentation to Krista Hanley for her father, James Alan Hanley, because some of you, but he really affected me greatly when I was a teenager collecting fanzines. I didn't really know much about Golden Age characters, things like that, and I love this cartoony work, but he really affected me, you know, learning more about my industry and the backgrounds and things like that. And I've invited Doug Rice and Russ Maheras and Jim Engel, and I'd like them to say a little thing about either what they thought about him, that they knew him, or what they thought about as far as the effect of his work. So, James, you're going to start.
I met Jim Hanley when I was about 14 in the basement of Joe Sarno's comic book shop, which at that time was in his house. There were no comic book stores then. But that's where I met a lot of people who became friends of mine for life, and people who were really active in comic fandom in Chicago, one of whom is Russ Maheras, who's sitting here. And later on I probably met you, Doug, in Joe's shop as well. And I wrote to Jim Hanley when I was about 13 or 14. I wanted to buy his comic book fanzine, and he sent me back the copies I ordered, and when I opened the envelope, there was an original art piece in there that he'd done for some other fanzine that he just folded in half and stuck in the envelope and sent it back to me kind of as a gift. I think it said for being the first person to order in that particular month. And I was really amazed that someone would send me original art. But it was very typical of the kind of guy that he was. He was an extremely generous person, and as I was telling Krista, last time I saw Krista was the day of her dad's funeral, so she was very young at the time. But to everybody like my age, like Ross, like Tuck, anybody that Jim came in contact with who were particularly people like us that were aspiring cartoonists and wanted to do comics and stuff, he had all the time in the world, and he was an extremely positive guy in light of the fact that a lot of his own personal career and trying to make a career as an artist had a lot of pitfalls to it, and it wasn't always the most pleasant way to try and make a living. But he always took all the time that anybody wanted with him. He was extremely encouraging. He would get us involved in his projects. We've all inked his stuff. We all worked on fanzines with him. He worked on the fanzines that anybody around Chicago published. And I think the most amazing thing, go online. There's a few websites, Doc's, of course, and there's a site called Pappy's Golden Age Comic Book site. I think that's what it's called. He's been reprinting a lot of Jim's stuff from comic book, and I've shared some of my memories with him and a few photos. You want to know what Jim Hanley was like, read the stories, because his personality completely comes through. He was a very positive guy. He was a very, we were just talking about this earlier, call it what you want, ethical, moral. I just think he was like an upstanding guy. I could relate to him as a kid because he was the kind of person whose work was exactly the kind of work I wanted to do. And I'm 10 years older now than he was when he passed away. I can still say to this day that I would be happy and proud myself to do any story that stood up to any of my favorite stories by him. It's my enthusiasm for his work and my admiration for him and his characters has never diminished at all. This is one of my most prized possessions. It's the original art to inside cover of Comic Book 4. These are all Hanley's characters in one place. Before a lot of these characters were revived, like Captain Marvel and the Spirit, because he loved these characters, he revived them in his own form. Good Guy, the Spook, Captain Thunder. He would just bring all this stuff back. The whole spirit of what was great about comic books was present in all of his work. And when I was a kid, as Doc said, when I was a kid really interested in the Golden Age and the history of books, this was a guy who knew it all. If you were ever at his house, which Russ and I were, shelves were filled with all these Golden Age comics that he collected, and he had them all bound and trimmed. I mean, it's something, you know, from a collector standpoint, it was insane. From a guy who loved his comic books collecting standpoint, it was perfect. You could go to the shelf and take down any volume of all the original Captain Marvel comics and stuff like that. There's a page right here, just sitting on a pile of stuff that Chris bought. This is my good friend Chuck Fiala in the strip. The other great thing about Jim was that if you became one of his friends, you turn up in the stuff eventually. Your name, your image, somewhere. It's something I still do myself. I spent many years drawing greeting cards in Chicago, and Jim and Russ, and a lot of my friends turned up on the pages of these things. These are all little things I picked up from Jim Hanley. I still am inspired by him to this day, and I still miss him tremendously. And I think that this kind of thing, and I'm willing to bet and guess, it's highly likely that most of you in this room probably never saw much of his stuff, but dig it out or find it. Run eBay searches for the fanzine comic book, and you won't be disappointed. And go to the sites where the stuff's printed, because it holds up great. Every couple of years I pull it all out, I reread it all, and it's like a new experience, and it's also like an old friend. And he influenced a lot of people. He was a very, very generous guy. And this pile of work is nothing. It's a lot of stuff, but you can go through all the old fanzines of the 60s and early 70s, and all through the 70s, and he's probably the single most prolific guy that worked in any of these areas. So that's it. I think it's great that you're going to give her this award. And when Kitchen Sink collected Fandom Confidential, which was a book that I did years ago, we dedicated it to Jim because he was a huge inspiration.